Hello everyone, ladies, gentlemen, and others. I am Rhea, and today I'm going to be reviewing the albums for one of my favorite bands, Gojira. No format changes since the last video, so let's get right into it. Starting with the first studio album, Terra Incognita from 2001, which I ranked 6th. This album translates from Latin into Earth Unknown, which I think is appropriate because this album already, for a debut album, was on another plane that most people don't reach within their 5th or dozenth or 50th album. It's amazing. Every riff on every song is excellent and attention-grabbing, and it's really intense and makes for a great listening experience. Plus, every song just is really structured well, which makes for the listening experience to be even better. The production is very good for a first album. It offers kind of a murky, almost muddy type of production, which I think is very fitting for an album called Earth Unknown. There's also quite a contrast between the main songs and the interlude songs, which are sort of interesting audioscapes of nature sounds or some other type of thing, like for instance, 1990 Quadrillion de Tons, which is a very interesting song, definitely. I find it very cool. Some people don't. It's also very easy to tell just from this first album how proficient each musician in the band is with their instrument, and they really show it off well here. Overall, this is a consistently great album, but in a discography as fantastic as Gojira's, it only ranks 6th. Some of my favorite songs on this album are Clone, Lizard Skin, Deliverance, Love, and In the Forest. On to the second studio album from 2003 titled The Link, which I ranked 3rd, which obviously is very different from many others. Many others consider this to be their weakest album, but I think that this album is amazing. I think it's incredibly underrated. There's so much interesting stuff going on here, so much progression from Terra Incognita. I think what most impressed me with this album is just how connected every song was and how much the songwriting improved. It had this very zen vibe throughout the entire album for me. It feels very calming and encouraging, which is a theme that is commonly explored within Gojira's music, and they do it very well here. I also find the production style on this album very satisfying. It's so crystal and crisp, and it complements the evolution of the artistry, the musicianship, and the vocals especially, which evolved quite a bit to have a bit more melody along with the brutality of the first album. I feel like this album really was Gojira stepping up even further and showing that they were capable of making amazing things and that they would continue to do so, and it pays off on this album. My favorite tracks are Death of Me, Remembrance, Indians, and Wisdom Comes. Then we have From Mars to Sirius, which I ranked 1st on this list. And here is where I am going to take a little bit of an interlude to tell you about a new series of videos that won't be happening very often, but will be happening in relation to my discography review videos. And that is a series called One of the Hundreds, which is where I go really in depth on an album rather than kind of summarizing my thoughts on it as I do in these videos, to really talk about why I rated an album a perfect score, which is what I did with this album. This is, I think, the first album that I've discussed on this channel that I rated perfectly. And so look out for that sometime in the future. I will be making a video about From Mars to Sirius to start my One of the Hundreds series soon. But yeah, to me, everything about this album is perfect. The concepts, the themes, the performances, the sonic continuation, everything about this album to me just makes me feel better than any musical project has ever made me felt. It makes me feel like I am on top of the world and nothing can bring me down. This certainly is a very complex song, with there being a lot of emotional dichotomy and a lot of very different songs, with the band being able to create such a balance between beauty and brutality and technicality and speed and feel. It is so complex in that way. It is beautiful, it is tragic, it is uplifting, it is empowering, it is everything, really. I think this is one of those albums that really defines music for me. If I absolutely had to pick a favorite song, I would go with From the Sky, because at the part right after the bridge where it goes all quiet, it just gives me the most chills, and it's the greatest feeling ever. Next up is The Way of All Flesh, which I ranked second, and this album is easily one of the coldest, darkest albums that Gojira has ever made. Clearly, because it is quite literally about death. I love all the new things that are introduced on this album, like the synth vocals on A Sight to Behold, or Randy Blythe being featured on Adoration for None, or the ambient hidden track at the end of the album. It's all just so interesting. The production, once again, I think is perfect on this album. I love it to death. Despite one or two dips in the second half of the album, I think that overall this album stays at the same insane level of quality the entire time, especially with The Art of Dying and the title track The Way of All Flesh, because holy shit, these songs are incredible. The Art of Dying, everyone who is in any way invested in Gojira knows that song and has strong opinions on that song, and I love it to death. It's one of my favorite Gojira songs, and one of my favorite songs, period. And then the way that The Way of All Flesh closes with the title track is so interesting and so perfectly wraps up the concept of death on this album, and I love it. I love both of these songs the most on this album. My favorite tracks other than those two are Toxic Garbage Island, Yama's Messengers, and Vacuity. Moving on to Les Fonts Sauvages, which I ranked fourth. This is an album that I overlooked for quite a long time, and I wish I hadn't, because it really is just an amazing album. The production is rich and dense and very immersive, and the lyrics are, for the most part, very uplifting, and it feels like that's almost the kind of theme that they were trying to present on this album, is just you are a spiritual human being and you are more powerful than you think you are, and it's so well expressed in all of the songs. The ambiance is very earthy and nature-like, which fits the self-connection and inner spirituality very well. And it is melodic while still not sacrificing the amazing musicianship and technicality of all the musicians. My favorite songs are Les Fonts Sauvages, The Gift of Guilt, Mouth of Kala, and The Fall. Then we have Magma from 2016, which I ranked fifth. This album is obviously a very different album compared to the stuff that had come before it, and I personally think that the reason for this is the fact that it is such a personal album, especially to Joe and Mario Duplantier, with it being dedicated to their mother, who unfortunately passed away during the making of the album. It's like the whole project is sort of wrapped in this bubble, and you can't get through it. It's only for Joe and Mario. And I think that is why it feels so different. And it is easily the most unique thing that Gojira have put out to date. I love the production, the very dark, spacey atmosphere that hadn't been fully developed or explored yet in previous records. And even if the death metal is completely gone on this one, the riffs still kill, and the performances still go hard. My most favorite songs on this album are Magma and Prey, especially the way that Magma transitions into Prey, and then that riff, that opening riff on Prey, is one of my favorites in Gojira's discography, and those two songs are the ones that especially stand out on this album for me. And finally, the most recent album, Fortitude from 2021, which I ranked 7th, last place. This is easily the most anthemic sounding album that they have ever made. There are a lot of great anthem type songs on this record, and there's a lot more melodicism on this record as opposed to the more rhythmically intense stuff on previous records, and it makes for a very great atmosphere, and it's really enjoyable to listen to. Sometimes the riffs or the songwriting aren't that great, aren't up to the same level as on previous records, but it is still very enjoyable to listen to and is very sonically moving, and the lyrics are very empowering as per usual. The lyrics are definitely the standout product on this album with very good messages in songs like Amazonia and The Chant, and the usual uplifting lyrics also shine through here. My favorite songs on this album are the opener and the closer, Born for One Thing and Grind. And those are my thoughts on Gojira's discography, with my final ranking from bottom to top being 7th, Fortitude, 6th, Terra Incognita, 5th, Magma, 4th, Sauvage, 3rd, The Link, 2nd, The Way of All Flesh, and 1st, From Mars to Sirius. I think the thing that I've taken away the most from listening to Gojira has just been how powerful, how moving their music is, with how it expresses itself, because it is very technical, it is very musically proficient, but it takes that and it turns it into something spiritual and empowering and moving. And that's, I think, my favorite aspect of Gojira's music and why I love them as much as I do. And apparently there are rumors of a new album on the way, so might be making another review video for that in the future. Not to mention the Olympic performance. Holy shit. Go watch that if you haven't. It's so amazing, the combination of Gojira with classical music and the Marie Antoinette holding her head beheaded. I mean, it was so cool. Thank you for watching. Give me your thoughts in the comments. Above all, don't be like me, and I'll see you soon.